Hey, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show. Thanks for tuning in to the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM. If you're interested in sponsoring my show, you can send me an email to the Mike Wagner Show at gmail.com, or you could also donate to the podcast. Just go to the Donate Listen site, and you can also donate whatever you like. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. For those who are interested, Anchor can give you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your phone or computer. We've got creation tools, allows you to record and edit podcasts so it sounds great, and they'll distribute the podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere. Spotify, Apple, Google, many more. And you can make money from the podcast with no minimum listenership. So download the Anchor app for free or go to Anchor FM to get started.
It's now time for the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Anchor FM, Radio Public, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. Mike brings you great guests and interesting people from all across the globe. So sit back, relax, and enjoy another great episode of the Mike Wagner Show.
Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition way. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support at sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/the Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, Apple, Stitcher, Deezer, and more. Take the Mike Wagner Show on any mobile device and subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. We're here with a wonderful gentleman from Indiana who's been all over the world in the United States, talking about animals, caring for animals, and providing for animals on national TV shows like Jim Fowler's Mutual of Omaha, Johnny Carson, and The Tonight Show, and quite a number of others as well, too. He's also been on TV in Indianapolis, talking about animals and caring for them. He's been around zoos and just talks about just all over the state, the Midwest, and wherever else. And once you talk to him, it's like it feels like you get to know a guy that just loves animals, cares for animals, and sometimes you wonder if you're an animal yourself. Not the party kind, of course, but I just watched some of his episodes as well too, and it's just like makes me want to cuddle a snake and everything else. So live, ladies and gentlemen, live from his own private zoo in Indiana. Without all the noise, ladies and gentlemen, the animal guy, Larry Battson. Larry, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, yeah, it's fantastic to have you on as well, too. I've loved watching your shows, and, of course, I've been a fan of the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Saw some great animals on there, and also watched Mutual of Omaha as a young one from way back when. Of course, you provide animals for such national TV shows, talk shows, and you also been around educating people about wildlife, animals, and everything else. And later on, we'll talk about you being an expert on, some would say, may believe or not. But first, tell us how you got started.
Well, I've always had an interest in animals as a youngster, and I think that all grew from going to Rocky Mountain National Park in Estes Park, Colorado as a child every year, all through my youth, up through my teen years. And back then I wanted to be a park ranger. I fell in love with the place so much. But I think the lecturing thing, doing the programs with live animals, all started from a gentleman who was a ranger at Rocky Mountain, and he was doing a program one evening at one of the visitor centers, and he had a packed house, and you could hear a pin drop while he was talking, except the only thing you could hear were two mountain lion cubs playing on the roof of the amphitheater, or the, and I truly believe that inspired me, because he had wonderful slides of animals he'd photographed in the park, bighorn sheep, moose, mountain lions, and so forth. So I think that was all the beginning. And so I just took the interest as I grew up, and I got lucky enough when I was about 19 years old to be hired by a gentleman who had a huge menagerie of exotic animals in southern Indiana. And I worked with him for a couple of years, and I had a chance to handle just about everything and anything from lions and leopards and bears, and even had a confrontation with a buffalo working for him one time. And it just went on. And then when I was about 24 years old, I had such an interest in reptiles and snakes and so forth. In fact, in my home, I kept at one time over 50 different species of venomous snakes. And I thought, people would love to see these. So we put together an exhibit. We traveled doing shopping malls and so forth, and people could see all these rare snakes from around the world. And then a gentleman approached me. He said, you've had a lot of experience handling animals, and I can put your trailer in different places if you'll be my assistant when I do my animal shows. I said, well, that sounds like a plan. So I watched this first show, and I thought to myself, oh, my gosh, this could be a lot better. So I basically created my own job. I sat in a chair, got a directory to all the local schools here in Indiana, started calling schools, and that was 41 years ago, and we've been doing shows in schools ever since. And I really think that's my calling, because I get too many letters and emails from people that have grown up and now are adults that remember my show from when they were in elementary school, that have gone on to become vets and zoo directors and so forth. So that's really, I think, the coolest part of our job.
It sounds like a fun job to have as well, too. It makes me want to be a host when it comes to animals, like, say, with Mutual Omaha, and also some of the other ones I've seen before, too, like, say, with the kids love watching Zoboomafoo on PBS, and watched a little bit of Jack Hanna's. And, of course, he had Wild Kingdom, and, of course, Johnny Carson, The Tonight Show. I remember just watching animals and the way Johnny Carson handled things. And, tell us about your experiences providing animals for Jim Fowler and Johnny Carson.
Well, that's quite a history. In fact, Jim travels all over the country and does speaking engagements, and they always say, "Bring your animals." Well, he has no animals, and he knows he has a network of people across the country that do programs similar to ours that have animals. They're used to appearing in front of people. They can be natural in front of an audience and so forth, that aren't afraid or intimidated by an audience. And we got a call one afternoon, I have to tell you. This was in 1979, I believe. And I'm in my monkey building. It's 95 degrees. I'm sweating. We're cleaning enclosures and so forth. It's just not a good day. And the phone rings, and he says, "Hello, I'm Jim Fowler." So right away I'm thinking to myself, which one of my friends knows how to imitate his voice? So I talked to him for 5 minutes and realized this was Jim Fowler. Well, he said, "Well, I'm going to be up in South Bend, Indiana, and I'm doing a talk for the Shriners up there, and I've heard that you have animals. Will you be willing to bring some of your animals up and we do a program together?" I said, "Absolutely." Because he was like my mentor. That's who I kind of worshipped, Mm-hmm. So we drove up to South Bend. We did a show with him, and it was fantastic. And after the show, we're getting to know each other and talking. And I said, that Celebes black ape we have, it would be tremendous on Carson. He said, you're right. He said, let's put that together. So I get a call from Mutual of Omaha's public relations department. They said, "Jim wants you to come out and do Carson and bring your Celebes ape." I said, "Well, that'd be great." So we put it all together. Well, we didn't get on. I think it was Diane Cannon ran too long.
Really?
So yeah, the witch. And,
makes you not want to watch her movies after that, right?
Pretty much. So, I was totally discouraged because I thought, my gosh, I told all my friends to watch and so forth. So, we have to go back to Indiana. But Jim said, "Well, we'll have you come back out." I said, "Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. I've kind of figured that." So they dropped me off at the airport, and this is the funny part of the story. People don't realize how much work goes into having an animal on television for 2 or 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get to the airport, and we'd always send our animals excess baggage, like you would send your puppy or your cat.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get it all checked in, and I'm sitting there by the, I think it was American Airlines that flew us out, and was going to fly us back. And I get called up to the ticket desk, and I go up there, and the guy said, and he's not nice at all. He says, that monkey, he says, that's not considered a pet, so you have to fly that air freight. I said, well, I flew it, excess baggage from Indianapolis. He said, well, you'll have to talk to Indianapolis. And I said, well, I'm in Los Angeles, so that presents a problem. So I said, get me my monkey, get me my stuff. And I got in a taxi to go back to where we were staying at the Hyatt on Sunset. The only problem was I was young in my career, so I didn't have much money. So I couldn't afford to check back in, and I knew those guys were going to be gone all day. So basically I waited in the parking lot for them to come back, and have hours and hours. And then the next day we put it on air freight to fly it home, and they just it was very unprofessional. I think they hit the front of the crate with a forklift.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they're bringing him out there to the freight office, and I'm looking over, I see him, and I can see the front of it's damaged, so I start walking toward it, and they said, sir, you can't walk over that yellow line. I said, watch me. So as I'm walking closer to it, basically, his name was Doc, he just pushed the door off, and he jumped in our arms, which I'm glad we were there. So the next time we went out, we had a crate specially built for it, which was pretty heavy duty. And the whole segment, well, I didn't think it was going very well because basically Doc was not on his best behavior because he didn't really know Jim that well. And he ended up smacking Johnny in the mouth, and it was just went on and on. Well, it turned out to be, according to the Carson people, the 15th best segment that they've ever had on The Tonight Show.
Really? 15?
Yeah.
I like that.
So,
better than Diane Cannon, I'll bet you.
Oh, yeah, she didn't even make the top 100. But
poetic justice.
Yeah. So we had, in fact, we lost Jim here last year. He passed away, and and his son Mark called me one day. He says, we were just having dinner with Dad, and he said, Larry provided the best animals for me, hands down, which always made me feel pretty good. But we went out 4 or 5 times. One time, I don't know how I can clean this up, but we had a baby male baboon that Jim wanted us to bring out. So we said, great, and so forth. Well, when we took him to school, we'd always put pants on him. Because the moment he woke up, so when he went to sleep, he was, he was ready, let's say.
I get the idea, yeah.
It wasn't half-mast, it was full-mast. All the time. So,
I guess that's hard to say.
So there's a scientific term for it, but I can't think of it right off the top of my head. Yeah. So he's a typical little male baboon. So we go out there to do the Carson show. Well, there's a gal that was a producer that just was not a nice person.
Ouch.
Yeah, she just wasn't very nice. And she came up to me and she says, that baboon will be the third animal. I said, okay. I told her, I said, I just need like a minute so I can put its pants on. She turned around and looked at me. She said, pants? These are supposed to be wild animals. So I'm thinking to myself, and the guy from Mutual Omaha, the public relations man, Jim Sparks, is standing right behind me, and he knew why we put pants on that male baboon. So I'm thinking to myself, I could tell her why. Then again, I could just keep my mouth shut. So I said, okay, no pants. So he goes out there, he sits on Donnie's desk, and the beauty of it is he had his back to the camera the whole time, and Johnny looks down and he says to Jim, he says, that's a male, isn't it? And the baboon wasn't really all that entertaining. He just sat on his desk and ate grapes, but it had his back to the camera the whole
time. Maybe he was too ashamed to be eating something. It's like round or wherever it came from. It's like maybe he was too ashamed that he wanted to keep it a secret or maybe get people to guess.
Well, I had a friend who went to Johnny Carson's party he had after the last taping of The Tonight Show, and he said Johnny talked about that particular moment. I said, wow. I said, that's cool. So, so it was always, it was fun. It was a lot of work. It's very, very stressful anytime you fly animals. I didn't lose it for very long. We were in New Mexico with Jim, and Albuquerque to be specific, and we flew home, and we had to go via Chicago and then catch another plane and come down to Indianapolis. Well, I get to Indianapolis and go to pick up my baboon. They don't have it. I said, where is it? And they got to looking around. They said, oh, it's sitting in Dallas.
Oh, no.
Now, and I told the woman, I said, now I can understand a piece of luggage that maybe the attendant didn't look at the right tag or something, and it could have accidentally put it on another plane.
Mm-hmm.
But this was a large baboon and in a large crate that said all over the direction it needed to go. So he didn't arrive till the next day. He was fine and all that. But it was worth it now when I look back at all the stories we had and so forth, doing the Tonight Show. I can still remember Johnny was, one of the things that he would not do is look at any of the animals before the taping, so it was completely spontaneous.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what made him so good. And he was, he's tremendous. In fact, David Steinberg was on that show with Doc, our Celebes ape. And before that afternoon, I had him Doc out for a while, and he was being Doc, getting on a table and shaking it. And David Steinberg, the comedian, said, this monkey's going to be funnier than me tonight. and when we're leaving the taping, he comes around the corner. He says, I was right. I was right. The monkey was funnier than me.
I bet you Ed McMahon was enjoying all this as well, too, I'll bet.
Oh, he was the greatest. He was the nicest guy. One of the funniest things out there when we did the Carson show was we were talking to Rodney Dangerfield, and he had a rehearsal that he ran through his bit. But as I told people when I got home, the rehearsal that afternoon could not have ever been aired.
Mm-hmm.
He was basically doing jokes for the band.
Mm-hmm.
And when he did his bits that night for the taping, it was much different. But once again, a very nice man. Yeah.
Oh, that is too funny. It makes me want to go back and watch Johnny Carson again with all the animals and Jim Fowler of Mutual Omaha. And who else did you provide animals for?
Well, Jim was my to tell you the truth, after working with, I did a couple things with Jack Hanna.
Mm-hmm.
We did a couple local shows here in Indianapolis. Jack makes the circuit,
mm-hmm.
and so forth. But I kind of had a lot of pride working with Jim because, as far as I was concerned, he was the number one guy,
mm-hmm.
and anybody else I was working with. Because basically, you didn't do it for the money because it was too much work. You'd have to charge him $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, or I'm being sarcastic there, but so. Jim was my guy, and Jim and Jack Hanna were not really on the best of terms.
Mm.
So it was, but I know Jack, and I had worked with him a couple times on some local TV stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, the thing about Jack Hanna, he's not as knowledgeable about animals as you would think.
Uh-huh.
He was basically, before he became a zoo director, he was a goat farmer.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, he didn't, and when we'd go to the Columbus Zoo and to see Jack, and he'd show us around, he'd basically have to talk to the various keepers throughout the place. When I asked him about a particular animal, he'd go get a keeper and have them answer my questions. So,
oh my goodness,
yeah, it was. And he called me one time and he said, "Larry," he says, "I want to use your badgers." Because we had a pair of really nice badgers that we did in lectures. I said, "Well, okay, here's the deal, Jack. I said, well, I might do this, but, I'm not going to be there. I says, whoever handles them, when they get in that crate, they're going to growl and hiss at you. I says, you cannot back off.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to just pick them up, because if you back off once, they've got you.
Mm-hmm.
They've got you, they've got you whipped there. He never called me back.
That's a good lesson to learn, too. It's like, just grab the badger and don't question it. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, well, that's basically true with any animal that you work with. We did a thing in Detroit one time, and my wife works with me now. She has for the last 25 years, and she's probably one of the best animal handlers in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And women really are the best ones. If you've ever watched, for instance, when Hannah would do Letterman, most of the animals were handled by girls, because they're good. I mean, they're just really good. The macho thing's not there, and that's very important. So I told my wife, I said, I can remember we had a full-grown mountain lion. We were doing a show in Detroit in this shopping mall, and I had to walk this mountain lion through this fine china display. And if it made a lunge right or left, we would have destroyed thousands of dollars worth of china.
Oh, my goodness.
I said, the mountain lion did perfect. It said it walked right up to this little bitty stage they had provided for us, sat there on the stage as we talked about it, and then walked right back to its crate in our truck, and it was, went well. But, so always in usual situations. That's the thing. When you work with wild animals on television, or the special promotions and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And I remember a story too. A while back, ZZ Top would be playing, and they have like wild animals up on stage. And I think one night where things got so hot and everything else, I think they had a buffalo, and I think they had a snake, and I guess they had some goats or whatever it was. The animals were pretty much fighting on the stage, and they drew more attention than ZZ Top, and they kept playing while the animals were fighting. It's so funny.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, I was in Florida one time, and one of the animal dealers down there, I was at his place, and he had a kit fox that had been on that tour, and I still kick myself for not getting it, because I thought to myself, man, it's used to everything. Going into school would be nothing for this.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I still kick myself for not getting that kit fox. But that,
Mm-hmm. And of course, we'll talk about some of your TV shows at in Indianapolis as well, too. TV8, you listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition way. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, Apple, and more. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device and subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. We're here with the animal guy, Larry Battson, talking about providing animals for Jim Fowler's Mutual of Omaha and The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, sharing all kinds of animal stories, having a lot of fun with it, and also has a regular TV show in Indianapolis on WISH in Indianapolis TV8, and tell us how you got started being on that TV station.
It started, basically I've been going on Channel 8 for close to 40 years.
Wow.
When I was starting to do this, I got a call from them. At that time we had an exotic animal pet shop, per se, and they called us up and they said, hey, we're wondering if you could bring in some birds for our noon show. I said, yeah, absolutely. So I took a couple of big macaws in there, and I told them in the process, I said, hey, now I have lots of different animals.
Mm-hmm.
I said, we can do this on a weekly basis if you want. Well, they said, yeah, let's do that. I don't do it that often now, but that's what we started off doing. And what's funny with the Channel 8, we had several great moments, but I was down at the Lafayette Zoo in Lafayette, Indiana, and we'd always stop in there and talk to the girls that worked there and see their animals and so forth. And they said to me, they said, hey, we've got a tame flying squirrel. Would you like to see it? I said, I'd love to see it.
Mm.
So they go and get it, and they put it on my arm, and it crawls up my arm and goes inside my shirt. So I'm thinking, right away I start thinking to myself, I said, would you mind, or would you bring this squirrel to Indianapolis and I could take it on Channel 8? And they said, yeah, we'll do that. So we took it on. Now, the guy that would always interview me or talk to me was a fellow named Ray Rice. Mm-hmm. And he had his goatee, he was real debonair, he had his three-piece suits, real classy guy and this sort of thing. So we were starting a segment, and I put the flying squirrel on his arm, and it does the same thing. It runs up his arm and goes inside of his jacket. So, he has to stand up. He has to take off his jacket. And, of course, when he took off his jacket, his belly kind of flopped out, which ruined his whole image.
You got to say by now, that's nuts.
And he says, I think I've been set up. Of course, I act like, I don't know what you're talking about, Ray. I said, went on. And so some gal was watching it, and she sends a letter off to ABC Television, and that segment ended up being on Fallops, Bleeps, and Blunders, a show they had in the 80s.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, I know. So I thought, that was well worth that. So, and one time we took a big emu in there, the big bird from Australia, and we had it in there earlier as a baby, and so I brought it in as an adult, which is about a 5-foot bird. And it was running around the studio, and of course I always act like I don't know what's going to happen, innocent, and it was just crazy. I mean, the poor gal that was interviewing me about had a heart attack.
Oh my!
Because the news people they like to know what's going to happen. So, and that's what I think. I like to surprise them, or, have something kind of extra for them. Mm-hmm. More than just what I should say more than just an interview. Like, this is an emu. This comes from Australia. They eat this. It bores me. I don't like that. Uh-huh. So I always try to figure out kind of what I might call a subplot where something might happen or go on. So, that was pretty funny. And so they got now, and then the new fellow that's on there now, 4 years later, this new guy's on there. We take snakes on there, and he's so afraid of snakes, and so I can, as I said, I can watch him do his butt dance across the couch as I bring these snakes out. And he's pretty hilarious, He's
oh man, makes me think of Tube Snake Boogie's ZZ Top. So
yeah, it's and I can remember one time we had a macaw on there, and also on the broadcast was one of the Colts football players from the Indianapolis Colts, NFL, wow. Marcus Pollard. Uh-huh. And he got close to that bird, and I thought we were going to have to bury him because he had such a tremendous fear of birds. Mm-hmm. I thought, wow, that's unbelievable. So, and we went on there once, and Mary Ann from Gilligan's Island was on, and we had a big mountain lion with us, and she says, I know all about the big cats and how you should, move slow and everything. I said, well, that's right. So Cheryl stood by her. Well, I handled the mountain lion for the broadcast, and that was pretty cool too. I told Cheryl, my wife, I said, "Did you ever think you'd meet Mary Ann from Gilligan's Island?" She says, "No." But working with us or doing this animal thing, she's met lots of people over the years. It's famous celebrity types. Betty White, for one. Mm-hmm. What a nice lady. I mean, we've done a couple events with her, and she's just tremendous and. Nicest lady in the world.
Mm-hmm. That is amazing, too. And, of course, of all the animals you've worked with, what would you say your number one favorite animal is?
They're like your kids. You really can't, I'd almost have to say Doc or Celebes 8 because, he got so much notoriety. from doing that Carson segment. But right now we have this olive baboon named Elizabeth that's just tremendous. I mean, she's just a phenomenal animal. I mean, when she appears in front of 500 school kids when we do an assembly program, it's like the Beatles walked into the room or something. She's just, we as we say, we don't train them to do anything special. We just want them to be themselves.
Uh-huh.
And we kind of work the show around what they will do, and that's what they're not trained. They're not, they are to a degree. I mean, this baboon understands everything we say. When we, for instance, if you give it a new toy and you give that toy a name, when you hand it to her, you can go back an hour later, say, "What did you do with that blue dog?" And she'll go get it and she'll show it to you. But she won't. She'll let you see it, but as far as giving it to you, no, that's not going to happen. No way.
I think that's their characteristics. I remember it's like, have a banana, here you go. Can I have that banana? No.
No, right. Well, that was that's what happened on Carson when the doc, he said that. And I'm watching that behind the curtain just a few steps away, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, somebody's going to get hurt here, because he was doing everything you shouldn't do around a primate, giving them a direct stare, trying to take stuff from them, all that. All wrong. But I think God was on our side and made sure nothing really serious would happen.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we're glad, too. And, of course, your goal as well, too, according to your website, you try to see the world through animals' eyes, such as what's their quality of life and everything else. And, of course, that's very important, too, to see through their viewpoint what their world is like.
Well, it is. And, it's very important now. I can remember when I first started doing this in 78, the government, of course, we're inspected by so many people, the United States Department of Agriculture primarily, that I can remember that I'd had to tell the inspector how to spell lion.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm thinking to myself, he's going to tell me how I should care for it? I mean, So things have changed over the years. You used to be able to, when I first started in the 70s, you could buy an African lion for $200.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't need any type of, which was wrong. It was all wrong. In fact, you may even remember, in the comic books, you could buy a squirrel monkey out of the comic books for $19.99.
I remember that. Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. I remember one of our neighbors did that one day, and it said, "Meet your nice, tame, new, friendly little buddy," and he sticks his hand in the crate, and the thing about chews his finger off.
Oh.
So, it was, it wasn't good. It's gone from one extreme to the other.
Uh-huh.
And after the incident in Connecticut with the chimpanzee and the woman and the one gal that was attacked, it was, it's just not cool anymore with these exotic animals. As far as, I don't know how to put this. You shouldn't own them for your ego. That's really what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody should. People have no idea what they're getting into, and basically, my wife said, this job, our life is a lot. It's a lot of work, and it is. There's always something going on, and you can't take a vacation because I've got a baboon, and there's nobody else that can handle it but me and my wife. So, we're 24/7 around that baboon and there are other animals, trying to give them the best life we can.
Mm-hmm. And almost like your children as well, too. And you still have your first big cat, nearly 17 years old now, according to the website. That's just amazing.
Yeah, it's the big cats. When I worked for the gentleman in Bloomington, he sold exotic animals. Now, I wasn't interested in doing that at all, and I talked to a lot of people out of even buying exotic animals. He thought everybody should have a monkey, and which I didn't. But he had them all. I mean, he had lots of animals, so I wanted to be around them, and it gave me an opportunity to work with them. Well, one day we had a fella come in. We had a lion cub. The fella comes in, and he says, "I want to buy a lion." I said, "Why do you want to buy a lion?" He said, "Oh, I think it'd be cool." And well, right away when he said that, I'm thinking, no, you don't need a lion. So he ends up putting a deposit on it. So I thought, darn. So he comes back, 2 or 3 weeks later, and we had two bigger lions, like in the 150, 200-pound range.
Wow.
That every day we had this great big room that we'd exercise them in. It was almost like a gym.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guys that would work for me, he would go in there and he'd exercise and work with these lions and so forth. Well, he'd get beat up pretty good, even though they were just playing. So this fellow that had put the deposit on this lion, he sees this and he says, I want to go in there with them. I said, no, you don't. So he goes across the street and talks to my boss, and my boss comes back and says, let him go in. I said, Bob, this is, he could really get hurt. He says, well, watch him. So what we did is we had a broom, and we said, hold this broom in front of you when you're in there, and they'll leave you alone. They have complete respect for this broom. So he's in there, and I'm watching through the window, and the guy that works for me is in there. So all of a sudden, these two lions see the guy. Well, they start, dipping that head down. They start galloping towards his direction. And as soon as they do that, he throws the broom down, tries to run for the door to get out of there. Well, he doesn't make it. He does not make it. And they beat him up pretty good. Mm-hmm. And they bring him out, and he's all beat up, and he's got blood coming from here or there. Nothing really serious, but because they were just playing with him. He's kind of like a toy. Uh-huh. And so I'm thinking to myself, good. He will not want a lion now. He will not want a lion. Thank God that happened. So this lion that he put a deposit on, I'm working with all the time. I'm walking it on a leash. I'd take it outside or walk it down the street. I mean, it was a fantastic cat. Fantastic. So I'm in there by myself. I don't know, a couple months later. Now the lion's about 75 to 100 pounds.
Wow.
And here he comes with his mother, the guy that put the deposit on. He says, Larry, I'm here to pick up my lion. And his mother's looking at me, and she says, he doesn't need a lion. I said, ma'am, you're preaching to... I fully realize he doesn't need a lion. There's no doubt in my mind he doesn't need this lion. And she's looking at me like I'm the devil. So I asked him, I said, what are you going to haul it in? He said, I'm going to haul it in my car. So what he had was a Ford Pinto.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and he had one of these barriers they use on poodles with suction cups on the ends, so you can suction cup it up against the window, and that was going to be his barrier, and he wanted to put the line in the back of the Pinto. So I'm looking at this setup, I'm going, oh, this is not going to work at all. But he paid what he owed on it, so I walked the line out there, and gosh, I was so upset. I was so mad. Not a thing I could do about it, and I put the line in the back of the Pinto and closed it up, and there they went. So I go back into the place, and I'm just totally bummed. And the phone rings, and I pick up the phone, and he said, Larry? I says, yeah, the lion's bitten mother. I go, oh, really? And so he was south of town at a marathon station. So I said, I'll be there in 5 minutes. And now I was really upset. Now I was just plain mad. Ooh. So I drove at that time a Volkswagen Beetle. Oh. So I'm driving my Volkswagen Beetle over there, and I pull up, and the car is completely surrounded with people. Mother is sitting on the curb, and at first I look at her to see how she was hurt. She had a little nick on her finger. It wasn't anything. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking inside the car with the lion, and the lion had completely destroyed the upholstery.
Oh, no.
It was having a fine time. It had completely tore it up. So everybody that was around, I said, I need everybody to back up. So I get in there, and I put the collar and lead on her, and I take her over to my Volkswagen Beetle, put her in the passenger side in the front, and I told her, I said, now, don't move. You sit right there. And she did. It was like one of those concrete statues, and I'm driving through Bloomington, Indiana. She's going down the road with me, sitting in that seat, and shortly thereafter, I don't know whether he ever came back again or not. I left. I moved back to Indianapolis and left. So I don't know whatever happened, but that truly showed me that not everybody needs an exotic animal.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good lesson as well, too. And, of course, you're also an expert on another big phenomenon as well, too. You listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget, Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition way. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, Apple, and more. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device and subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. We're the animal guy, Larry Battson, out of Indiana. He's provided animals for Jim Fowler, Mutual of Omaha, and The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. He's also shared some wonderful animal stories and a good reason why not to have an exotic animal. As we talked about, he's not lying, of course. And he's also an expert on one of the phenomena that's been going around. And yes, according to his website, he's here in Indiana and talks about Bigfoot. So let's hear about that.
Well, I've always had a fascination with the subject. I was in Columbus, Georgia, at a place called Callaway Gardens doing some public relations for Mutual of Omaha with Jim Fowler. And we were having breakfast. And over breakfast, he was telling me about this new television project he was working on for ABC, called Spirit of Adventure. And he had just gotten back from Russia, and they had been doing a segment on the Russian brown bears.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he told me that all the guides wanted to talk about, the guys that were taking him back to where the bears were and so forth, was Bigfoot. Because they'd seen something in those mountains which was very similar to what's been seen in Oregon, Northern California, Washington, throughout Canada. And I said, really? And I said, what do you think about that? He said, well, I don't know. You know, he didn't want to put himself on the spot too much. So that was kind of left at that. Well, it wasn't shortly after that I get a call from a company in Cleveland, Ohio, that produces at that time produced the biggest outdoor show in the country, the big sports show. And I'd been working for them for several years doing animal programs and different programs, rattlesnakes and so forth. And they called me up. He said, hey, you have any new ideas for something we could do for our outdoor show? And I said, well, I was just talking to Jim Fowler. I said, why don't we try and put together something on Bigfoot? And they thought, and this was in the 80s, before it wasn't like it is now.
Uh-huh.
And they said, yeah, well, that sounds great. He said, let's do that. So I ended up, I'm an artist as well, so I ended up building an 8-foot-tall model. And they also said, you know, see if we can get an expert in here on the subject. So what I did is I called Willow Creek, California, and there's a little variety store there called Hodgson's Variety Store.
Mm-hmm.
And basically Willow Creek was the capital of Bigfoot. Not too far from there was where the famous film that everybody's seen was shot, of one walking through this creek bed. And so I'm talking to the owner. I said, hey, I need some different stuff for my display, you know, like mugs and different souvenirs. He said, oh, I have it all. I'll send it all to you. I said, oh, that's fantastic. I said, do you happen to know anybody that's actually seen a Bigfoot? And he said, well, there's a couple of guys that were through here a couple of years ago. I think I still have their numbers. Hold on, I'll get them for you. So he gave me these two numbers, and these gentlemen lived in British Columbia. So I called the first man up, and his name was John Green. Well, John Green, it turns out, is probably one of the foremost. He had written several books on the subject. He was a journalist, and I called him up just out of the blue, and he was just the nicest guy in the world. And before it was all said and done, I had him coming to Cleveland, Ohio, to be a part of this presentation from British Columbia. And Harrison Hot Springs has to be one of the most beautiful places on this planet. Has great temperature year-round, just beautiful. And I persuaded him to come to Cleveland, Ohio. So I was pretty proud of myself for that. So as I'm talking to him, I said, hey, I have another name on here. And a fellow named Bob Titmus. He said, oh, that's my neighbor. He just lives, you need to talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I called him up. Now, he wasn't so forthcoming. He was kind of dry. And I found out that he was, in the last years of his life, he wasn't feeling well.
Mm-hmm.
But after on the phone with him for a little bit, he started talking a little bit more. And I finally just asked him, I said, hey, have you ever seen a Bigfoot? And he got real quiet. And he said, well, I have. He said, I've seen them twice. And he said the first time was in 1941 off the coast of Alaska when I was in the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
He said we were on this ship going down the coast, and he says just about evening, wasn't quite dark yet. He says most of the sailors were down in the ship eating, playing cards, and so forth, and I decided to go up on the deck and look at this beautiful Alaskan scenery. Well, he looks over on the shoreline, and he sees this thing walking along the shore with two legs, big, brown in color, huge head, long arms, and in his own words, he had killed and he was a taxidermist and stuffed just about every animal native Alaska, and he had never killed or stuffed what he was seeing that evening.
Oh my goodness!
So he had decided that when he got out of the Navy, that his goal was to go in pursuit of this. And it so happens the second time he saw them was in 1963 in Kitimat, British Columbia. He was back in the middle of nowhere, and he watched three of these things, a large one, a medium size, and a small one, basically scale this rock wall about 1,500 feet, which would have taken a professional climber a day to do. They did it in about 30 minutes.
Really? Amazing.
Yeah, so when I hung up the phone after talking to him for a long time, my whole attitude toward it changed dramatically. I was going to make the display kind of tongue-in-cheek, and I decided, no.
Uh-huh.
There's something to this. There's basically something to this. And there was, because I got approached by several people who had sightings and had stories to tell me. But probably about it, the best witness that I talked to that had seen a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot was Yellowstone Park Ranger Bob Jackson. And for 30-plus years, he patrolled the most remote area of Yellowstone by himself, hunting poachers.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, yeah. He was, let's put it, he was a bad whammer jammer. I mean, this guy, he arrested more poachers in Yellowstone than all the rangers combined.
Uh-huh.
And what they were in fact, he arrested a bunch of Dick Cheney's buddies. And this
really?
is basically what ended his career, because the government approached him about, hey, lighten up on these guys. Well, he said, I'm not. He says, I absolutely will not. He says, they're no better than anybody else. Because his testimony has cost people their thousands and thousands of dollars. And, he's put them in jail for periods of time. What they would do is they would kill elk, and they just take the heads and the antlers out and leave the carcasses. Well, you can't do that, because basically what you're creating is a grizzly bear bait, and the bears are learning, the young bears especially, that when they hear a gunshot, it's time to go eat. Well, anytime you put bears and people in close circumference, it's not good.
Wow.
Something always will happen. Yeah. So that's what he was up against. But Bob Jackson, he was by himself. He had his pack horse and the horse that he rode, and he said they were going nuts. And he said their noses would flare, their eyes would get big, and usually that meant there was a grizzly bear close by.
Wow.
But so he looks down this valley and he sees this deer. He said, "Well, this makes no sense. These horses are going nuts. The deer's not even bothered by anything. So what's going on here?" Well, all of a sudden that deer bolts. It runs, and coming out of this willow thicket, as he described it, was this thing, this animal that walked on two legs, or ran on two legs, I should say. It was covered with long black hair. And he says it was a Bigfoot. He says he watched it stalk this deer from Willow Grove to Willow Grove. Several of the people that worked on the trails, they would talk about they found an elk carcass that had been completely deboned, and they'd found these huge human-like footprints around it. So after my discussions with Bob Jackson, I thought, well, that's it. His testimony is better than anybody I've ever talked to. He has the most credibility. Mm-hmm. So, it's true. It all exists. And he told me that he said he was with a guide one time, and he said they were sitting on horses. The guide had just dropped some guys off fishing, trout fishing, and they were and he said all of a sudden this scream come out of the valley of the mountain. He said basically it sounded like 1,000 elk going to their death.
Oh, my.
And he said, this scream, this guide looked at him, he said, what in the world is that? What in the world is that? What's making that sound? And he said, I didn't tell the guide, but I said, I had a real good idea what was making that sound. I can remember talking to the guy that was in charge of Glacier National Park. The same thing happened. They were on a wolf count in the winter, and they were in a tent, and they heard one of those screams like that, and the guy that basically knew Glacier better than anybody says, I don't know what that is, but load your guns.
Load your guns. Just don't have the bears say it's dinner. That's one thing I actually learned tonight from you. It's like you shoot off a gun in the woods. The bear says dinner time. I did not know that. I learned something.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the reason they want this. If you kill an elk or a deer, you take everything out with you. Mm-hmm. You don't leave it, because they'll put two and two together, and it creates a big problem. Mm-hmm. And it's illegal besides that. It's against the law.
And also too with Bob Jackson, who experienced a family of Sasquatch over that 25 career, and talk about family. How many Sasquatch has he seen, like in this family as well too? It's not just one.
Well, he only saw the one.
Just the one. Okay, I was trying to clarify. Okay.
Yeah, he only saw one, and he watched the one. He says this is a very rare animal. He says that's why I always have a problem. The Bigfoot thing is now going crazy because of all the shows on television. Mm-hmm. And there's if you go on the internet, there's a million groups that are in pursuit of Bigfoot. It's become pretty crazy, and I go and speak at these conference. They have what they call Bigfoot conferences, where they get supposedly quote unquote experts to come in and talk. Now I'll go and talk, but I don't say I'm an expert. Uh-huh. I've just accumulated stories and information and witnesses over the years that I might know a little bit more about it than most people. I've read quite a few books on the subject. Mm-hmm. And it goes back into biblical times. Davy Crockett it was Davy Crockett. Or no, excuse me, Daniel Boone. Daniel Boone claims he shot one in Kentucky, and he buried it. And when he told the story and they laughed at him around a campfire one night, he just shut up about it. And he didn't talk about it until his journals came out, and he wrote about it. So if someone knew where to start digging in Kentucky, they might find something. And I was asked in 2009. I went to outside of Washington D.C. to the National Conservation Training Center, and I spoke to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on the subject. That's the first time they'd ever had anybody do that. And after I did that talk, I received emails from park rangers and trail people and so forth that work for the Park Service and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that said, man, we're so glad you talked about it. In fact, I actually did a 1-hour television show with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which was broadcast over 1,200 outlets all across North America.
Wow.
And, in fact, whenever I go into the National Conservation Training Center, I always kind of laugh because when I go to my room, because they have 3 hotels on that piece of property. It's 500 acres. And they'll be showing that broadcast even still. They said it was the most popular broadcast they've ever had. They've had Jane Goodall and lots of really, people with some notoriety. But they said that Bigfoot program, they said that's been our number one. So,
wow, that is amazing as well too. And of course, have you been approached on when you'll be speaking at another Bigfoot conference or anything, or?
In fact, I will be. I'll be at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference May the 2nd, and it's one of the biggest. It'll draw like 600 or 700 people for one day.
Wow.
In the Salt Fork Lodge. And, it draws a tremendous crowd. And guys from Finding Bigfoot will be there. I'll be there. There'll be an anthropologist coming in and so forth. So, and I know a lot of people from the television world that done the specials on Bigfoot and so forth. My wife is, she's not a big fan of it, especially the time the television program Wife Swap had contacted me, and they wanted to trade wives, my wife with another wife from a Bigfoot guy.
No. I bet you said no.
I run that by my wife, and she just kind of gave me the dirtiest look in the world. She says, "I'm not going." Oh my Jesus!
Or you know what? Or you can do this, wife swap. It's we can go with my wife, but you have to take a couple mountain lions with you. So
it was she wasn't too keen on being at some Bigfoot guy's house for whatever. I had to say thank you, no thank. Then I had Monster Quest, that show from the Learning Channel that was on for a few years here at my house one time, doing a thing on Bigfoot. And the funniest part was I looked at him, I told him, I said, do you think, because they said, what are our chances of filming one here? I said, about 1 in a million. I said, do you think when you go in there with your catering service and your directors and your producers and you're in the woods with all these people and cameras and microphones and lights and stuff, that there's any chance that you're going to film a Bigfoot? I said, you got to be crazy. And then I said, if I thought that you might, I would already have a deal worked out with you. Because if I took you along and we filmed a Bigfoot, you would owe me $1 million.
Oh, that's a challenge.
Well, I made fun of the show so much that they end up not even airing it. And it was like, it was, and I still got my money for it, because I told them, I said, if you're going to take up my whole day, I've got animals to feed here. You're going to have to contribute to that. And they said, well, we will. And they did. They didn't. I don't think they knew when they were talking to me what they were in for. But yeah.
I can imagine. In exchange for promotional consideration for finding Sasquatch, you can spend a couple days with the baboons.
Yeah, there you go.
and of course, people learn from the experiences related that you shouldn't mess with a Sasquatch. And of course, there's a big reason behind it. Not just big, of course.
Yeah, well, I always ask these guys, these so-called researchers, I said, do you know what you're in pursuit of? Do you know what you're trying to find? If you would find it, what are you going to do? Because you're talking about a 7 to 8 foot animal that's stronger than anything I know of. I mean, I said, what do you hope to be your final results? What's your goal? Mm-hmm. And they just kind of look at you like, oh, we're looking for Bigfoot. I know people that 99% of the people that have seen him are people that weren't planning on it and had no interest in it. Mm-hmm. And when they finally do see it, these people, they have no desire to see it again. Zero.
Probably pretty scary, too. They're just mainly docile creatures, and they're just antisocial. That's what it sounds like. And I'm sure if you try to take your smartphone or camera, try to take a picture, he'll probably come after you and not just eat the phone, but probably eat you.
Well, the thing is most of this, I've always said probably 99% of the sightings are never reported. And when you see them, I mean, there's lots of animals we know exist that there are very few photographs of, such as the Sumatran tiger, the snow leopards and the Himalayas. There's not that many photographs of. And George Schaller, who was one of the foremost zoologists in the entire world, who did most of the research on the snow leopard, mm-hmm. has a Bigfoot casting on his wall. And someone asked him about that. He says, what's the deal with that, George? Why do you have a Bigfoot casting? Do you think they exist? He says, well, there is no evidence that they don't exist. And that's where he leaves it.
Uh-huh. And I think that's a very important point, too. And, of course, he talked about some of the animals that are rarely photographed, and some are in danger of extinction. And what are some of the animals right now that are in serious case of extinction, like as an up-to-date?
Well, most of your great apes, your orangutans especially, because of the deforestation for the palm oil in Borneo and Sumatra.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're just cutting down forests to make an Oreo, basically. The demand for this palm oil, it's so sad. And of course, the gorillas, a lot of the gorilla habitats been involved with major wars in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there's the demand for what they call bushmeat, which is essentially chimps and gorillas and orangutans. They sell the meat, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that's they have people assigned for when this stuff's shipped into the country to make arrests and to investigate it.
Wow.
So, really, you got to say all the animals that we have on this planet, they're in some type of danger, and but especially the great apes, especially your big cats,
mm-hmm.
your tigers. At one time there used to be 100,000 tigers. They estimate in India. Now the numbers are less than 10,000.
Wow.
I
heard about that.
Yeah, well, people say, well, there's 10,000. Well, that's true, but to think there once was 100,000. So that's quite that's an annihilation of the species.
Uh-huh.
And in Australia, finally, the rain has started in Australia, and those fires are getting put out. But billions of animals were killed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's such a sad state of affairs down there that
mm-hmm.
it's going to take. But I did hear the areas that have burned out that already vegetation is starting to return, and it's going to grow. Mother Nature has a plan. The only thing with this plan in Australia is those fires were started by arsonists. They weren't started by lightning and natural causes.
Uh-huh.
And that's a problem. That's a big problem.
Mm-hmm. And of course, how many animals have you known that have been killed during this wildfire? And what was the most the largest or most breed that got killed?
Well, I've heard the numbers in the millions, and I think I read somewhere that the koala population has been decimated considerably.
Mm-hmm.
So it's and it's going to be years before they find out the true damage. It's when you see burnout fields with kangaroos and so forth that've been incinerated. Horrible way to die. I mean, gosh almighty, what had to be for the people that, and what's really great now is that there's so many people getting involved that, so many donations. I just hope the donations go to the right place. Australia will never be the same again, at least in our lifetimes, but maybe it can be better.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to take a while, too. And, of course, what can people do to help preserve these creatures as well, too, especially the, God's creatures?
Yeah, well, right now money, donations is what... But the true blessing is the rains are coming, and if they put the fires out, then they can assess the situation, what replanting needs to be done. But Mother Nature has a great way to rebuild. When the Yellowstone had their fires years and years ago, and they were tremendous fires, and they said the first animals to go into the burned out areas were bears, and that was interesting to me. And but what was created after those fires, because that was not done by an arsonist, is the meadows returned, different animals would return, and so forth. So, if Mother Nature starts the fires, that's one thing. But when man starts a fire, that's a whole different deal.
And that's so true, too. And, of course, you have to... preserve the wildlife and, let people enjoy animals and continue with the shows that you do. And, of course, one more question before we wrap things up. We'd love to have you back on as well, too. What are the odds of having a Sasquatch come to Indiana?
Oh, we have them in Indiana.
Do you really?
On my property. Yeah, I've had them on my property before.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah. In fact, within a half mile of where I live was one of the great Sasquatch stories I ever heard. It was told to me by a conservation officer that he says, I can tell you, but I can't tell anybody else, because now he's retired, he wouldn't care. But at that time, he'd be worried about his job. That's why a lot of the people in the Park Service don't say much about it, because of their employment. They don't want to. Mm-hmm. They don't want to jeopardize it.
Right, exactly. Especially what happened with Bob Jackson and confronting Dick Cheney and everything else. I can see why on that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Right, exactly. And of course, just a couple of things here as well too. Who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
I think the animals that were been a part of it. Truly. Mm-hmm. Human-wise, I would probably say my father, who, when he passed away 20-some years ago, everyone said he had a slow deal. He had leukemia. But all he would ever talk about was what I was starting, what I was getting involved doing, and that meant a lot to me. But, of course, Jim Fowler. I mean, I learned so much from him. Working with him was always he was my hero. And when he passed away here a few months ago, that was a tough day, and he was just simply the best,
Mm-hmm. And of course, it makes me feel that I've known the guy, the way you talk about him, and he's just fantastic. And what's the best advice to give to anybody at this point, especially when it comes to animals?
Well, we need to save our outdoors. I mean, like I've always said, when I talk to a group of school children, I realize I'm not talking to all bunch of future zoologists or biologists or so forth or whatever, but all these kids are going to grow up and vote one day, and when they vote, they all make the decisions why we need to save our national parks and what politicians are behind that, and save our forests and so forth, and preserve our great outdoors. So I try to emphasize to these youngsters our love for animals, and that they should love them as well. When they look at an animal, in their school gymnasium or auditorium, and they look it in the eye and so forth, that's pretty meaningful for them. At least they've told me that over the years. I get lots of emails from now grown-ups that were kids when I started doing this, and I've been doing it so long, I have school principals now that remember me when they were in elementary school.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh, that's amazing. Larry, we'll definitely have you back on as well, too. Love to hear more animal stories. And before we go here, we've had Larry Battson, the animal guy on the Mike Wagner Show, providing animals for Jim Fowler, Mutual Omaha, and tonight's show with Johnny Carson, also an expert on Bigfoot, and has a regular show on WISH TV in Indianapolis, TV8. And once again, tell us about your upcoming projects, if you have any for 2020. What's your website? How do people contact you? And where can people get to to watch your shows or anything like that?
Well, the best way is through our Facebook page, Larry the Animal Guy and Friends, and that's where we promote all of our shows. I'm on Facebook. I do a show on Facebook Live on Wednesday nights at 9:30 and Friday nights at 10. So if they become my friend on Facebook, there's a complete hookup there, and then I talk animals and answer their questions, and they just have a great time.
Wednesday at 9:30 and Fridays at 10. Of course, it's not just for party animals. So
that's right. So if you want to party while you're watching it, that's okay.
Hey, that sounds great. I love watch parties. I think I'll do that with you. Larry the Animal Guy, watch party.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Larry, just want to say a big thank you for your time. You've just been fantastic. Learned a lot from you. Looking forward to having you on again, and do us a favor. Keep us up to date.
Well, let's do it. I'll look forward to it.
Thanks for listening to the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Anchor FM, Radio Public, and themikewagnershow.com. Please support our program with your donations at themikewagnershow.com. Join us again next time for another great episode of The Mike Wagner Show.